So the Connect to Work initiative is a new opportunity which is coming through national government as part of the government's set of priorities around getting people back to work, basically. It's very much about tackling health inequalities. And in Lancashire, the project's going to be led by Lancashire County Council, who are doing the commissioning on behalf of the Lancashire Combined County Authority, the LCCA. Active Lancashire has been working with CellNet and the Lancashire colleges. We've held one workshop so far, and Darren from the team, from the Active Lancashire team, he's going to take you through the presentation. If there's anything that's not clear, please put that in the chat. I'll keep an eye on that, and we'll leave room for a discussion session at the end of the discussion, just where we can, the end of the briefing, where we could perhaps discuss if there's any appetite to work collaboratively around that and how that might happen. So Daz, if you're okay having a go at trying to bring that presentation up, and I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Aidan. Let me just try and share. Give me 1 second.
Right, we can see that, Daz. That's
Can
good.
you see that? Brilliant. Right, I'm going to take you through some slides. These are the slides that we went through. We hosted a scoping session with various colleagues last Monday, just in particular things like the Housing Association, colleagues from Lancashire Colleges Network, and also the social enterprise sector through CellNet all came together just to kind of have a look at it, get some more information. And as Adrian said, is there appetite for a network to have a look at it? So this is the Connect to Work. This is the kind of growing issue. So obviously economic inactivity is growing. Benefit claimants are going to be affected in terms of the benefits reform. People might have seen that coming out last week. There's up to 2.6 million people that are going to have their health benefits reassessed. So again, there's going to be more people that are perhaps going to be forced into receiving support or looking for some support to get back into work as that kind of calculator shifts more towards people being better off in work. As Adrian mentioned, it's connected to the white paper in terms of getting Britain working. So again, lots of impetus moving this way in terms of getting people back into work and off the benefit system. There's obviously lots of stuff, and I'll show you some of the graphs and the models that are being proposed later. But again, obviously lots of increase of mental health issues, and in particular amongst obviously young people. These are things you probably already know through working in this environment, and obviously more people with multiple and complex barriers to work and having more health related conditions that are stopping them getting into work. The long-term, obviously, ambition is nationally to have an employment rate of 80%. We're currently at 75%. So again, that is a massive shift needed in terms of getting more people ready and back into work. These are some of the health conditions. So again, probably no surprise to colleagues on the call. You're all working in this kind of arena, so you'll be understanding of what the kind of health issues are in terms of related to work. In particular, mental health is massive, particularly amongst young people. There's musculoskeletal as well. So again, lots of kind of connections you can probably make to some of the health conditions that are stopping people getting back into work. Again, just mentioned the white paper, and it's all about better integration of health and employment support, developing a coordinated approach, prioritises prevention, early intervention, and addresses health inequalities. Again, we're all working in this environment to get people active. So again, Connect to Work really does lend itself well to the work that we're all doing. So the Connect to Work is an integrated offer of local work, health and skill support. And it's based, interestingly, on the supported employment model. And we'll go into that a bit more detail in a second. just in terms of timescales, we think that in the next couple of weeks there is going to be an invitation to tender, which will come out from the LCC. That'll be out, we think, in the next 2 weeks, with probably a close down, I would say, back end of May time for a submission. So again, quite tight. We've also aware that the three authorities, Lancashire County Council, Blackburn Darwen, and Blackpool Council, will be doing some direct delivery from July. So they'll almost be top slicing it and getting on with some delivery from July. So this is the supported employment model. So again, you look on the left-hand side, this is what government are telling us works more around the health and health inequalities and getting people back into work. And on the right-hand side, I'm not going to read these out, but these are some of the traditional models that we've perhaps used in the past. You know, when we talk about ESF provision that's been there over the years. And again, lots of kind of getting people ready, getting people supported first before they start even thinking about jobs. Whereas this supported employment model, it is all about the job and the job outcome, getting people into work, and then we will support them to stay in work. So again, the shift, as you can see, is really about getting people into employment. So again, integrates employment into support into health services. So again, lots of links to clinical establishments, doctors, surgeries, pharmacies, etc. And I'm working directly with those who are engaging with people that've got health-related issues. Interestingly, it's really about getting people job kind of ready after 4 weeks. So again, whatever your personal opinion is of that, getting people somebody that's got multiple complex barriers or health-related issues, starting to look for work after 4 weeks. For me personally, my own personal opinion is actually quite challenging, but that is what we're trying to get people through Connect to Work into that position. So after 4 weeks, they're at least applying for jobs, looking for jobs, job searching, got a CV, started to apply for jobs, etc. And then we will support. That's what they're telling us is the best model. Again, it's very individualised to the participant, but also there's some support around in work, which we'll come on to in a second. But again, supporting employers around, taking on people that have got perhaps low-level health-related barriers, etc. So again, getting them ready. So your business health batters type stuff that we've done in the past, again, things like that would help keep people in work and supported as well. So again, there's two different models within the supported employment model. There's the RPS, which is the individual placement and support. And again, this is the bulk of the provision. So again, very much working with employment specialists, providing direct assistance to get people into work. Again, I mentioned working with clinical teams, other support providers, and develop recovery focused plans. Again, very individualised, very action plan driven for an individual, very much teeing people up into jobs and into real jobs and supporting that employer. So again, very much in terms of sustaining and securing the employment with a job progression, etc. Again, caseloads wise, you're talking a particular support worker, for example, or a health coach would have a caseload of a maximum at any one time 25 participants. But again, just in that kind of model, lots of links to local employers that are offering kind of real jobs is how they determine them. The second element of the model is the supported employment quality framework. So again, on the whole program, this is 25% of participants. So this is very much working with participants who've got perhaps more complex needs, including individuals with learning difficulties, disabilities, severe autism. Again, very much integration with clinical teams. Again, is not necessarily required on this one, but more intensive support for participants and employers. And again, they've put there that there's a 5-stage model: engagement, vocational profiling, employer engagement, job matching. So again, very much that job matching which is appropriate for that individual. Again, caseloads are a little bit less on this, so you're talking 20 at any one time. A particular kind of health coach would be supporting. The big thing that they're talking about is the fidelity assurance models. So again, within that, you're looking at intense, detailed external assessments, quality improvement, action plans, real kind of evidence of how that person has been supported within those caseloads. So again, there's going to be lots of kind of requirement to provide that evidence of how that person has been supported within that model. Again, just a typical participant journey that they've shared nationally. So again, I'm not going to read through this in great detail. We will send this out with the minutes and the slides. But again, very much around that awareness, of the program, what's available, who would be delivering it in a local area. So we call it the Greater Lancashire area in this instance. So again, who would be delivering, what support would be available, both out of work and in work. There's going to be lots of engagement and onboarding, particularly with individuals and also with the employers as well. Have we got the employers ready locally to work on this program? I've had lots of discussions over the last week. I think I've heard it from about 6 or 7 employers that have all told me they're struggling to recruit, and I kind of don't agree with that, to be honest, because they've not got out there, unless they're recruiting for astronauts or something. But have they got out there and engaged with local programs that are supporting people to get back into work? And I think that is one of the challenges to get employers to do that, rather than the traditional advertisement kind of routes for recruitment. And again, the 2 models are at the end there. So again, interestingly, out of work, 12 months support. But again, bear in mind that individual would have to be in a position after 4 weeks to be looking for jobs, job searching, employing, filling out application or whatever it is after 4 weeks, but they get 12 months support. In work, maximum 4 months, but again, that can be reviewed as well. Again, we're waiting for further guidance on that when the RTT does eventually land for Lancashire. So again, these are some of the eligibility criteria. So again, it's people who are economically inactive and want to work. And again, finding those are easier said than done. But again, with the benefit reforms, there will be a lot more people that are coming into this category, having to look for work, not necessarily ready for work, but having to look for work because their benefits have been reassessed. And then people who are in work but at risk of becoming economically inactive. So again, I know there's a few people around the call that have been doing some work on Workwell. So again, very similar to kind of that in terms of people that are at risk of becoming economically inactive. And the government obviously don't want that to be the case. So again, there's a list of typical groups. There, I'm not going to read through them all, but interesting one for Lancashire. The national project is for 18 plus. So anybody who's 18 plus, or obviously post college. For Lancashire, what they've managed to do is secure that age down to 16, which is a really interesting one. And again, that could be because there's quite a lot of people that are starting college, but perhaps coming out of college, it's not for them, and becoming economically inactive and almost becoming obviously in that neat category. So again, whether there's some provision that could be tailored for that age group, that is something that we may want to have a look at. Again, this is another kind of model pathway that they're looking at in terms of checking eligibility, checking employment situations, and again, whether they would actually be, benefiting from Connect to Work support, and then again, looking at that kind of motivation to work. So what is people's motivation to work? Just in terms of scale of the programme, it's obviously a national programme, massive scale. Lancashire is one of the biggest areas that have been given resources for this. And again, the table on the right gives you a kind of typical yearly kind of figure that we've got to look at. So in Lancashire, in year 2 and 3 are the biggest kind of caseload years. So again, ramping it up from April 26 and April 27 for the 2 years. Again, big kind of numbers. So I've mentioned the 12-month support out to work. Again, can be extended, we're being told, but again, until the ITT comes out, we won't know exactly what that threshold means for extended support beyond 12 months. And again, similar within work, 4 months. Just in terms of a unit cost, they've said for Lancashire it's 3,600, and that's a maximum unit cost. So again, very much outcome-based payment, so it will be payment by results model. Again, we don't know at this stage what that looks like. I presume for those that are doing some work on Workwell, there is almost at that basic cost that you get regardless of whether you get the outcomes, and then you get 40% outcome-based claim, which is obviously once you've achieved that outcome with that individual. Was mentioning earlier about real jobs. So what they're saying about real jobs, again, jobs that hit the lower threshold outcome, 16 hours plus per week for a maximum of 91 days. That gets the outcome for the lower threshold job outcome. And again, the higher threshold for 182 days. So again, when they talk about real jobs, it's not work experience. It's jobs that are obviously there nearly 3 months as a minimum. I think that is about covered, Adrian, all the detail. Do you want to take people through the next steps and how we're going to look at it next?
Thank you. I'm just going to recap a few points. So first of all, I'm just putting the link in there for the Connect to Work national programme. Just come off that if you don't mind. Daz, stop sharing. Thank you. So I just wanted to recap a few points. Firstly, the reason Active Lancashire are presenting this and not Lancashire County Council, Lancashire Skills Hub or the DWP is because it's shortly to be out as a commission tender, and they don't want to be seen to undermining that tender process. So as Daz says, the ITT, the outline specification will be available hopefully in the next couple of weeks. They're talking about a May decision, a late May decision, and a July start. So there's a real issue there about mobilising activity very quickly. The £3,600 per head is very much an average, isn't it, Darren? And we really need to get into this. You'll see that there's a real focus for 25% of that provision on people who've got more complex needs. So people who've got LD, they may be subject to educational plans and support. They may have more complex needs, including autism. And so there's going to be a differential payment to them. The contract's available for 5 years. And I hope you got this through Daz's presentation. There's a bell curve model to that. So it's a pretty steep rise though, isn't it, Daz? And it's a steep fall off as well. And if you bear in mind that the intervention is going to last 12 months, that from year 4 you're going to be into that close down phase. So it's really, you need to think of it as a 4-year program plus, really. There's some real subtleties in this, which I'm just going to bring out again from Daz's briefing. There's a real focus on referrals from health. So if you've got a relationship with a primary care network, social prescribing, GPs, you've got those relationship with health professionals who are identifying individuals and actively referring to you that they may be interested in work. That is the sweet spot that we're trying to get. So the key thing here is to identify partners who've actually got some engagement with the health sector, because the whole thing's based on overcoming health issues. And as you'll have seen there in Daz's profile, the majority of those, particularly for young people and mental health, the MSK stuff, as you'd expect, rises for older adults. Caseloads, 20, as I say, for people who've got more complex needs, 25 for less complex needs. But there's some real subtleties here. And Daz, please come in on this one. One of the things that we've identified is that already no single provider can actually provide the pathway over what may be 12 months or longer. You may be doing the engagement piece, but you might be working with your local college. You might be working with the job centres, And then certainly you might be working with the employers and employer networks. Daz, do we need to say anything on that?
No, I think it's a good point actually. I mean, what they are saying is that consistency throughout in terms of that mentor, that health coach, or they would be the go-to person. They would get to know that individual inside out, I guess. But at each different stages, they would need specialities. So again, when you're looking at an employment outcome, obviously you'll need to connect them up with somebody that's in that employment arena in terms of getting people into the actual job, but the support throughout would be the same kind of person, and that's what they're looking at.
Absolutely. So there needs to be obviously a lead individual who would support people on that journey. Just to give some reality check to this, colleagues will be familiar with IAPT, which is obviously the mental health first tier of support around stress, anxiety, and depression. So we know in Lancashire that's delivered by the Lancashire Women's Centres, and we've had a conversation with them about in their initial profile and how many people would actually be open to work. And through people coming through that relatively low mental health screening process, they'd suggest that there's only 1 in 20 individuals who are actually open to work through that IAPT process. So there's going to have to be a huge number of potential individuals who are engaged for this program for it to actually come up with those numbers. Finally, we don't know anything about how this contract will be structured, whether it will be structured around those two groups, which Darren outlined, or they're going to do it on an area footprint basis. We just don't know. But at this moment in time, the sense is that they're going to go for maybe 2 or 3, maximum of 4 contracts. But how they're structured, we're not really aware of that. So the view is that there are national providers of services like this who are out there who are actively in discussion, actively considering this option, but there's no collaborative partnership out there, to bring partners like yourself together at this moment in time. So that's something we would have to examine if there's an appetite to do that, and if a lead could be identified. And there are a few options as we've identified from other voluntary sector organisations and potentially even the colleges as well. So that might be an option, as indeed maybe Active Lancashire ourselves if that was appropriate, but not necessarily so. So colleagues, are there any questions that you've got so far from the information that you've received in that briefing? Michael, thanks for saving me.
For what you wish for, Adrian, I might have a few. But I'll ask one, and everyone else can go, and then I'll ask another one later. Has this been piloted anywhere, or is it very much a case of it is a live pilot and it's learn as you go? The reason I ask is with some of the learnings we've had from Workwell, with obviously difficulties getting that going around some misunderstandings, and then we've kind of started working a bit more differently in the last few weeks. I think it'd just be really interesting to get a view of what this is actually like for somebody delivering it, because it does sound quite complex with the length of the journey there and the different parts of it. I don't know if you can even answer that, but that was just a question that I did have.
Darren, you're probably better to answer this, I think.
Yeah, I think what they have done, obviously, in terms of the supported employment model, that has been out for quite some time. There are different projects nationally and locally that have done delivery on the RPS model in particular, and the supported employment quality framework. So again, people like Blackpool have done lots of work around this. There's things like Project Search that are out there locally, and I think what they have done is obviously looked at all the previous ESF provision, matched it up with these two models that they believe are the most successful way to tackle this cohort, and then they've just gone big. Let's go nationally straight away. So I think they have taken up quite a bit of learning just from the briefing workshops that I've been to, and then wrapped it up into one just to get a response. You know, obviously the reforms came out the other week, didn't they, in terms of that, and the obviously subsequent backlash from different people, whatever your personal view is on it. And this will be the big response program. So I would have thought over the next 3-4 weeks, you'll probably hear a lot about Connect to Work in the media, and this is the government response to that.
Okay, thanks, Darren. I think just sorry, as a follow up. So obviously there's that massive health element, isn't there? Which it feels very much like a lot of partners on the call, whether it be mental or physical health, can really assist with. Maybe that more detailed, wider support element. I think there's just question marks that need to be answered. Probably, I fully appreciate probably don't have that now, but there are question marks about what the expectation would be on an individual staff member who might have more of a health referral background to do that bigger piece of work with someone that might not be in scope of their job role. Is I guess the concern that I would have.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, where we see that the network contribute is through a number of angles. Well, let's just work this one through. Clearly, there's the engagement piece through the networks that you've got at a community level, both with direct health and with the indirect health. And I think we're all getting better at those health relationships, aren't we? Whether it's social prescribing or MSK or whatever it might be. So there's the engagement piece. And then once people have actually got engaged in terms of a referral, it's having an attractive offer so they'll actually work with you. You know what I mean? That's absolutely key. And we've seen that is where a lot of the national partners, they just haven't got that. They haven't got people who are connected with the local community. They won't get people through the door. Then there's the dealing with the health and well-being issues, improving people's mental and physical health. Obviously, we haven't got the key skills there in terms of that vocational profiling. You know, that's where we're going to bring in other partners, and to a degree, the employer engagement. But we have to examine as a sector what opportunities have we actually got, and could we be moving people forward? But again, a reality check, we're looking for 8,000 roles over 5 years, so it's a big ask. I don't know how this is going to be structured when it boils down to the contracts. Then there's the in-work support, which you saw earlier on. That is going to be around about four months, you know, potentially out of the 12 or in addition to the 12. We're not quite clear on that. But that in-work support is absolutely another area where you've got real expertise and you can really add value working with both the business and the individual as well. So that's useful. Alex, I'm going to go to you next. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. I suppose I had a bit of a question around that supported employment and that in-work support. Are there any examples of that we can look at? I know I'm sort of picking up what Michael was saying before, but I'm just thinking from like an arts point of view, I could definitely see some kind of theatre, some kind of performing arts support to help people, you know, role play, all the rest of it that they might need to go through in terms of actually doing a job interview, and then actually in work itself, how to deal with certain situations, you know, how to present more confidently, all that kind of thing. How would I can think of a couple of theatres, for example, that would probably be quite good at delivering something like that in Lancashire, but it's how would we connect into that? Because that programme would have to be designed, wouldn't it?
It would. Daz, can you answer the specific about examples, and then I'll come back to designing the intervention. Thank you.
Yeah, I think just in terms of what they're talking about in terms of in-work support, what's happened previously, certainly from my experience with delivering ESF employability programs for over 5 years, is that the traditional, if you looked at the first kind of slide, the traditional models were, let's support people with their barriers, let's overcome those barriers, let's help them get into work, let's get them into work, and then from there we cannot support them. So previously on ESF programs, that is where the provision ends. So you would almost get somebody ready, send them into jobs, and then hope that they would stay in that employment. They've obviously learned from that, and this program is to kind of soften that, so that once they're in work, or you get them into work, you can actually provide that in-work support. So the example is a really trivial example that we got given last week, but you know, basically once I get Alex into work, I've got to make sure Alex gets up at 9 o'clock on a Monday. You get into that workplace, I get you there, I make you dinner, I make sure that you get into that kind of routine of getting up for that work, and that you are supported whilst you're in there with any kind of barriers that you might have. Working with the kind of employment organisation, the employer, and their kind of occupational support or whatever it is, that is where that kind of 4 months, I would say, is what you class as the in-work support. So you're almost supporting the participant, but you're also helping the employer embed that employee into that workplace.
Okay, so it's really functional then, isn't it? I mean, that sounds to me like an app.
Possibly, yeah.
Potentially. But so as long as there's no opportunity for actually in-person engagement with those people.
Oh, yes. I just need to underline this. There's a real focus on coaching and mentoring, isn't there, Daz? That's probably the backbone of this, isn't it? I think it's fair to say. Both in the pre-employment and in the employment phase. And just to be clear as well, because again, I've not brought this out, lot of subtleties with this project. You may start working with people who are at risk of losing their employment because of their health issues. Now they would come in with a package. You come with a package of support. So all that stuff that we've spoken about, all the vocational profiling and the applications, that's not of any significance to them. That it's going to be about working with the employer and the employee to improve the health and well-being of that individual and support the employment practice to make it a more inclusive and healthier place to work.
So for example, could we, like journaling, for example, could be a way of helping people reflect on their issues, and a bit of coaching connected to that, and then maybe a bit of confidence support through.
Yeah. And I really like your example, Alex, as well, about building through role play people's ability to engage and interact and have the confidence to present themselves, appropriately. And I think that could work really well across the whole age range, not just young people, which I think we naturally have in our heads. We mustn't forget that within the client group's been identified, we've also got offenders and people in recovery as well.
Yeah.
So I think there's a real diversity of people from backgrounds which some of us are more and less familiar with, which is why it's really important to have a wider a wider range of skills and experience in any collaborative group.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Ian, you must have been pleased to see the reference to LD, SEN, complex needs. I mean, that's home turf for you guys, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, very much so. I suppose with that in mind, our hubs in Hyndburn and Preston, we're always getting people, volunteers that want to step up and seek, paid employment, and also those, with LD, perhaps have never had employment before but are wanting to break out of that, and so this is, I mean, from a Wales Role point of view, we've only ever taken on apprenticeships in the past, and that's been a lot of mentoring and shadowing people, almost giving them a one-to-one member of staff to support them. So this is new to us, but I can see how it could definitely support some of our volunteers and participants in both Preston and Hyndburn. And I think Michael actually said it as well, but what support do we get to get ready, if you like, and to support people and to promote it? And what do all our colleagues and volunteers need to make sure that we're able to give the people coming back into this workplace the best experience ever, so that they come back and, obviously, do we get that 3,600 based on performance that they're in employment for the whole 4 years or a year? Or I suppose I've got a lot of little questions that just need to, and you may not have the answers, but we're really keen to be a part of this. We just need a bit more information. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Daz, do we know anything more about how the payments might be structured against results?
No, we're not obviously privy to that information at this stage until the RTT's out. I'm only reading between the lines. I would think it's going to be something similar to the Workwell model, which is again a bit of a hybrid payment by result. You get a guaranteed 60% basic fee to support that participant, whichever model they're in, and then a 40% would be given on completion of the outcome. That is what the Workwell model is like at the moment, and I think that is obviously a programme which Lancashire County Council are involved with, and I can see pushing for this to be a similar payment model, I would have thought.
Yeah. In terms of upskilling networks, really interesting question that actually, Ian, because as Darren mentioned, we've brought together our housing networks and our voluntary sector networks also just to have a similar discussion, just to raise the issue. And the conclusion that they reached very quickly was that they would like to have basically district level, place level conversations and partnerships where you could pull together experts, and there would be a lot of peer-to-peer sharing and almost trading of people to access. If you needed support around SEN, they might be seeking your support for as a provider within Accrington. And if you were going to lead with that individual, you might then be seeking the support from Accrington Rossendale College with a job search, for example. That kind of thing. So that mix and match, it was felt that a district level kind of coordination group might be helpful just to get the ball rolling on that. And one thing I have to say is that the funding allocation is not likely to be based on IMD profiles. So there'll be, as far as we know, there'll be a model where they're looking at priority groups, as we just discussed, but the whole county's in scope, which I think is helpful if you've got provision that's, for example, running in the Ribble Valley or in the more rural areas.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Graham, thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. Yeah, I think the talk about those linkages with health is really exciting, and I think you've kind of talked around the pathway from and people specialism in engagement, individual support, employee networks, and kind of sustaining that employment is an interesting approach, because I don't think anybody's got that whole breadth of delivery nailed. And certainly from an engagement and support point of view, you could see how YMCA might be able to help with those two elements of it. I suppose my question is around the numbers, and if there's any work that's been undertaken around mapping the geographies where there's the kind of demand and the pathways into the employment sector. So actually understanding which sectors are actively recruiting at what levels and what have you. And also, I suppose, the impact of national minimum wage and national insurance contributions, and how that is impacting people's recruitment strategies, and how we might overcome those barriers, or if there's any any consideration put into that, I guess.
Thanks, Graham. Now, you'll notice that any of the more technical questions, I'm going to refer to Darren. So, Darren, have you got any thoughts on that? And could I also I just thought of one thing related to Graham's question. Could you also cover the minimum 16 hours stuff as well? The on the job. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks. I'll try and, if I can remember what you exactly said, Graham, but just in terms of the stats for economically inactive, they're readily available for all district authorities. They're out there. I can share a link with the minutes on how to kind of access those, so you know what numbers are in each area that are economically inactive. And then obviously this is almost like a programme getting ready for more economically inactive as the reforms come in terms of benefit changes and reassessments and stuff like that. So again, it won't be alarming to say that the biggest kind of economically inactive will be in higher levels of IMD areas, and that is probably a good correlation to make. But again, these stats are readily available. just in terms of links to different sectors that are recruiting or whatever, or we're going to have to work with, certainly sectors like the health and social care are always looking for recruitment into. So again, lots of kind of support and really kind of appetite for those in those sectors to come through and support a program like this, because as I said earlier, some of these organisations that I'm aware of are struggling to recruit, is what they're telling me. Others are obviously manufacturing. So again, you can start to read into this the kind of lower level jobs, the entry level type jobs. If people are looking for astronauts or whatever, then this is probably not the program to get them from. But again, for local jobs, and how they really badging it up is real jobs where people can go into, maybe do, as Adrian said, the initial 16 hours, where they can still, it's then getting them from nothing working to doing 16 hours and then looking at potential careers and progressions within that employer. That is what they're kind of looking for in terms of real jobs. Does that answer it, Graham? I think.
Yeah, I was thinking about those recruitment challenges for employers at the moment, and especially given the changes and potentially the day one employment rights coming in and that kind of thing. But if we understand which sectors are actively looking to recruit, then that's always helpful. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've had conversations in this last week or so with employers, some large employers, Silent Night, your Daisy Communications, to name a few, health and social care providers, all still looking to recruit. And again, I've asked that question of how they would be affected, with the employment changes and costs rising, all that sort of stuff. It's about profit and loss in it for some of these.
Thanks, Graham. Michael, thank you.
Hi, OG. Darren, yeah, two questions I've got, if that's all right. One, I guess, more linked to employers. One, I guess, still very much linked to the I guess the process. And the process one, if I put myself in the shoes of someone who might be on this scheme, I think it's important to find out for people that might deliver it, but also for the actual participants, like who kind of owns that, who's that caseworker. So, for example, I'm sort of thinking about, you could do, a number of us on the call could do a really good engagement piece of work and really map our local networks and already engage there anyway. We could all do a lot of delivery in terms of whatever that intervention needs to be, whether it was health. Again, Alex, really like your example about the journaling skills or about the interviewing work. So I can see quite easily where there's bits of it that each of us can do really well. But who overall owns that? Because then if I put myself back in the shoes of the participant, anything got the sort of like the circumstances and maybe the nature of the people that would be these participants, if we then pass them from pillar to post to go, all right, well, we've done your fitness bit now go and see Alex to do your more social skills or whatever it was we wanted to role play. Are we at a risk of losing that person? And then I know you reference like colleges, or go to the college to help with your job skills. At some point, it's almost like that bit of, we must all have relatives or ourselves who've been passed around the health service with a problem, and you give up and just go, I'm not that sick, or whatever, it's fine. And it could almost be ineffective. So I guess it's really understanding who owns that. Owns is really an awful word to say, but who owns that case, and then what is the specific role of each organisation that might be me working together, and how do we not lose them? So yeah, that was question one. Sorry, I don't know if you go with that one. Was that a question? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll go with that one. I mean, the model that I think will work best is almost having that consistent person throughout that would handhold you, rather than a referral into stage, if that makes sense. So if I'm working with you, Michael, I'd hold your hand right through the journey, right up into employment, and provide that initial support once you get into work. There might be somebody else specialist there that provides that in-work support, but actually to get you there on that first day at 9 o'clock with your dinner in hand so that you know what you're doing, that would be, I would say, the support model right the way throughout, so that you know you've got a bit of consistency, you know where to turn to if you're struggling at any stage or whatever, and that handhold would the right way through. Now, I'm not a specialist in training, so if you needed some on-the-job training or job-ready kind of training, I don't know, I'm picking an example like a forklift truck driver license or something like that, then you would obviously buy in specialisms to do that, but I'd still hold your hand to make sure that you turn up for that course, complete that course, and then you're putting that on your CV and all that sort of stuff to go to the employer, if that makes sense. So that consistency of support throughout is the same person, but actually the specialisms might be at different stages. Like you say, the engagement, the in-work support, the employment link. That's what I would see as the model, that would best work for both of these.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if us as organisations on this call, wanted to be part of a bid and work on it, we are our member of staff. Would our member of staff be that case? I think we just need to really hit the nail on the head with this. I know we've all probably asked around this a little bit, but just into the really specific ask is only learnings from work. Well, where maybe there's a few unanswered questions going in, but is would our member of staff be that person?
They certainly could be. I mean, you look at work well. There's obviously no job outcome in work well, so you're taking them up to a certain point, aren't you, to address their health needs. So you're supporting them through that journey, that 12-week program, to improve their health, so that they're then, when they exit your program on work well, they're in a position and to either get back into work, return to work, or be physically active and job ready, if that makes sense. Whereas this program takes it a step further. It's that getting them. So I know we've had a few talks, haven't we, on the model for particular like yourself on Workwell, where you thought they were getting referrals and you actually got people that are ready to come into your program, and you would do that engagement, you'd do the 12 weeks, and then you would do the in-work support potentially as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you just raised obviously. I think with the timescales listed, I think there'll be a real need to. We've got teams of staff who are very good at going out and doing engagements and getting referrals, and in that specific case, since we've understood that Workwell situation, I think we've generated like just under 30 in 2 weeks. So we can go and do that. We can obviously do really good. We use the HealthWise scheme, but other GP referral, exercise referral schemes are run by people on the call. We can do that bit. We can probably, I think, there needs to be then a level of understanding of would our staff or would the staff of the rest of the people on the call want to then go and help somebody find a job? So is there a natural fit there? So if we then say, if I turn around to our team and go, oh, guess what, guys, it's just outside of the job they ever applied for. Some of them might be all right with it, and some of them might not be. So I think I don't know if a tender opportunity does come out. I think it's just being really clear at what people can help with.
Yeah.
Because I think if we it's law of comparative advantage, isn't it? If we all do what we're really good at, we can get a real good outcome for someone. But if we do the bit that we're really good at and then try and do the bit that we've never done before and got probably no right doing, we're gonna mess it up at the end game.
So just to work through that Michael, if I may. Sorry, I've got half an eye on the time now. What you described there is that there is the potential for people on this call, if they so wished, to be the lead, and actually, for that conversation, that coaching and mentoring journey with that individual. But you're absolutely right. If there are going to be skills which are required, which are outside your existing, you're not going to gain those quickly, even with coaching and mentoring and support. Then we've got to bring other people into that partnership who are going to be. We've done that before effectively, but as long as you were to maintain that direct relationship with the beneficiary, so to speak, that's absolutely fine. So we can do that. We can bring in people to complement your skills without undermining the relationship that you would have as the lead with the individual.
And I think just in terms of the unit cost, everyone's joining on the unit cost of 3,600. So we get 3,600 per person we sign up. I don't think that is the case. It's we're going to remember this is a very much an individual program. So it's what that person needs out of that 3,600 quid. So you might say for the first 18 weeks, you know, we would need, I don't know, £1,000 to do our 12-week program, but actually after that we need somebody else to come in and provide some specialisms, but there would be a same person that would hold that hand and make sure that they transition into that next stage, if that makes sense. You might not necessarily directly deliver it.
Yeah,
but
that's really clear now. Yeah, that's for me anyway. Yeah, hopefully that's really clear now. But that's fine. Yeah, that's reassuring, and it is clear. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Alex. I know you've been waiting. Thank you.
It's all right. Just on the consistency thing, then, as well as having a consistent sort of caseworker that sort of, you know, manages that person's journey into and through work, is there also a need for consistent delivery spaces? Obviously, if this is being delivered across Lancashire, I'm assuming that some things will happen maybe in the workplaces, but then other things which may be more specialist might need to happen in specific delivery spaces, whether that's a college environment or whether that's a theatre or whether that's a leisure centre. I don't know. I'm just sort of thinking from our point of view, if, for example, as part once they're in work, there's maybe a bit of training needed around, you know, conflict resolution, how to conduct yourself and assert yourself in meetings, all of the kind of stuff that is a kind of mentoring thing but would benefit from a bit of role playing, for example. Would that have to be done in the workplace, or is it that, say there's, I don't know, 20 people from different parts of Lancashire that all need that skill at the same time? Would it be a case of having that workshop happening in a delivery space that's more centralized? I know this is like real detail, but it's the kind of thing.
I think you're right to mention it. So, for example, if people haven't got basic skills and that's an identified barrier, then we're going to send them on a basic skills course, and they'll do that in another setting. So, if people need their confidence and their interview skills raising, or even their team skills, or even their social interaction skills, which I think that's the level that we're talking at, then yes, if there's that provision available, that could cross-cut across a number of geographies and also different types of people as well. So we're not just dealing with people on rigid streams, so to speak. So I think it's a really good point.
I'm just thinking, in terms of people knowing that place is where they go to do a certain thing and become comfortable with it, don't they? Rather than feeling like they're going here, there, and everywhere to access different things that they need.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I do want to round this up in the next stage, but this is a discussion that we can have about our model and what flexibility and opportunities there are to do some collaborative work, which allows for flexibility and creativity. Joe, thank you.
Yeah, can I just take this back a little bit? Because in the slides we sort of criteria, etc. But I feel like a lot of this is really dependent on, somebody's readiness to partake here and somebody's readiness to jump into the action stage, which we've talked a lot about the doing, haven't we, on here? What's in, like our health coaches currently work in practice, but they work on patient activation measures, so somebody might start off as a 1 and end up as a 4. What's in place at the beginning of this to check for sort of readiness, the patient's activation? Because we're talking a lot about the doing here, but I feel like I need to understand the step before this. Sorry.
No, I'm so glad that you've mentioned this, and I mentioned about the IAP stuff, didn't I? And there's only 1 in 20 people coming forward. So, getting people to be identified, self-identified, getting them to do that engagement piece and the repeated engagement piece. We need to work out that whole pathway, and that is completely unresolved. A lot of people will not be confident or willing individuals. Perversely, some people will be, and there's some evidence, for example, from people who've got an SEM background that they are and an LD background, they're actually looking for pathways. So we do need to do some more work, Joe, to understand what people's motivations are and their expectations, so that we can work with that. We have not got that fully resolved by any means.
Thank you.
I think that's a really good place. I'm just aware of time, colleagues. One thing that we've got against us in this process is time, and I hope you heard that at the beginning. So July start, having stuff that's good to go in July, at least in some form. The numbers are relatively low, but they are there, and anybody who would submit, a proposal has got to think realistically, what could we get on the ground? So as a collaborative partnership, there may be the opportunity for some people to put stuff on the ground early doors, and then for others to come along as a second wave once they've got people in place. I think there's the acknowledgement that we could potentially provide an umbrella by working collaboratively. But clearly, if the tender specification, the ITT, is only going to arrive in the next few weeks, and it's got to be submitted as a full proposal by May. We're probably going to have to start to have conversations and people to identify what they could deliver, what the opportunities they might put on the table, and how that might be structured. So I suppose the question is, if we were going to just bring some partners together initially to have a discussion around this, would you be up to having that discussion on a county level initially? Would you want that online? Would you want that in person? Just to give us some feedback, because we're going to have to do some preparatory work if people would like to put in a credible application for this by the end of May. Anybody got any thoughts on this? Thanks, Graham.
I think just in terms of the practicalities of bringing people together, given the short timescale, it's difficult to get people together in person. But having said that, I think you're probably only going to get the nuance and the detail of what people can bring and contribute by getting people in person together. I think it'd be difficult to do that on a online forum, really. So we'd certainly be up for getting together in person. I think that, for me, that's probably the format that you require to get the information, really. And we'd be very much up for being part of a collaborative approach to it.
Thanks, Graham. And I think, just talking Turkey, I think we're going to end up with big pieces of paper which talk about potential pathways. So that's going to be difficult to kind of present on a little screen, isn't it? Michael, thank you.
Yeah, I think Graham makes a good point there. Just taking inspiration from what the session we were in on Friday, where David had pulled together that information ahead of time, and he'd almost done some mapping about what each organisation can deliver. I was wondering if before a type of meeting that Graham recommends, we each just filled in a bit of a can you do that engagement piece locally? Can you do a delivery piece? What is your delivery piece? So 10 out of 10, we can do absolute world-class delivery on that. We're 5 out of 10, we can make a stab at that. How confident are you doing the job search with people, or would you be able to deliver that piece? Are you 1, 2, 3, whatever score you give yourself out of 10 with your current ability to do that? And then again with the in-work support, almost understanding like what the different people on the call and the wider network could do, how we currently just an honesty call on where we currently rate ourselves. I don't know if it's overcomplicating a bit, but potentially a bit about, could we do a little bit if we were to have a few weeks to do some recruitment? I think because I've got questions in my mind, I need to probably go away and ask of GLL's central recruitment team, because in my head I'm thinking we probably need to recruit somebody to do some of this work in a slightly different role profile than we currently use. And do we have anything? Not that we couldn't upskill our staff, but does it go beyond what GLL would class as our business? I don't know if others on the call would have that same thoughts to go away and look at. Again, but it's very tight timescales. I think a little bit of a paper-based thing. It also identifies the skills gap across the group, doesn't it, as to whether we do need to then have a specialist provider do a part of this. And again, my gut feel is we'd probably all be pretty good at the community outreach and the engagement, probably all very good at the delivery, and then we'd probably be lacking a little bit of that job searching and in work support is my gut feel. But yeah, just a suggestion, really, piggybacking off Graham's good idea.
Thanks, Michael. So Just in view of time, I know we're coming to the end of the session, colleagues will have to leave us, but if we start to put some dates out there, pull together a mapping proposal, get that out, and then it's a coalition of the willing, really, who's up for this. But it will, just looking at Alex now, it will cover the wider cultural sector, sport, physical activity, active recreation, and obviously our arts and libraries. So we'll bring those partners together and we'll do a workshop and try and hammer something out over a couple of hours. So we'll come up with some prospective dates and move that forward. Could anybody willing to suggest a venue? Michael, you're sorry,
Yeah.
go on.
Oh, I was going to say, sorry, you could use your house if you wanted.
Euro House. So Euro House is just near Shadsworth. That would be great, Charlotte. Could you just send me the details of that? You know, the actual room or whatever, just so that people can find it postcode wise. That's really helpful.
Okay.
Thank you, Charlotte. That's really helpful. Charlotte from Mind to Muscle. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, I know we've run over by a couple of minutes, but I hope that was a welcome introduction. I've put in the chat the Connect to Work detail, and we'll send through the presentation with minutes, with just the recording, just so you can have a look at it and share it with others if you feel that's appropriate, just to get the ball rolling at your end. We'll get a date sorted as soon as possible, and thanks, Charlotte. We'll have that meeting just off the M65 towards Blackburn. Okay, colleagues, thanks for your time.